more things that you can do in life, the more valuable you are, and that's not just in life. That's in football as well. The BWI Daily Edition, today we're taking a look at the most versatile players on the Penn State football roster. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr, and we're going to get into a little bit of projection, but I'll get to that in just a second. First, though, you've heard me say a bunch of times, make sure you subscribe, make sure you leave a comment on our podcast, or if you're watching our YouTube channel, subscribe and hit the notification button so you don't miss the daily when it goes live. But if I could ask one more thing, and I know I already asked you to do 2 or 3 things. I don't want to give you homework. But if you have fans of Penn State football in your life that don't know about what we're doing here at Blue White Illustrated, we're doing a bunch of new stuff. So if there's people in your life that don't know about what we're doing here at Blue White Illustrated yet, make sure you tell them about it. Share this stuff with them. The worst thing that you could do is be that hipster guy, right? Like, oh yeah, I remember when they were doing that stuff at Blue White Illustrated. Yeah, then they got too big. Yeah, I liked that band when they were underground. Don't be that guy. Nothing draws a crowd like a crowd, and the more people that watch, the more cool stuff I get to do, the more this becomes. So, share with your friends and make sure you're letting everybody know about what we're doing here at Blue White Illustrated. We're super excited to do all this stuff for you, and I just want to share this stuff with everybody because I think this is really fun, really cool, and also in a football sense, pretty important. So today on our most versatile players, we are going to be doing a little bit of projection. It's not just about guys and where they've lined up, but I'm looking at how Brent Pry and how past offensive coordinators have used players and how that versatility might project to some guys currently on the roster for Penn State football. So it's not just about what guys have done in the past, although there are some on the list that are like that. It's what can they do and what have other players been asked to do in the past. So coming in at number 5 with that in mind is Hakeem Beeman. Is he a defensive end? Is he a defensive tackle? At this point, I don't really know. He's listed at 253 pounds on the Penn State football roster for fall camp, so that, along with the addition of the news that Adisa Isaac won't be playing this year because of a non-football injury this offseason, makes you think he's going to line up at defensive end. But because he did play defensive tackle, I can't wipe that information from my brain. It makes me think that in maybe the opposite sense, but on the similar side of the same coin, he could do something like what Grossmatos did for the Penn State Nittany Lions. If you take a look at the snaps by a lineman, according to PFF, for Grossmatos during his career, he spent the majority of his time as an edge rusher in that traditional outside of the tackle, hand in the dirt, 2-point stance. Doesn't really matter, but on the outside of the tackle, guarding the edge. Now, Hakeem Beeman can do that from a run sense, but can he pass rush from that position and be effective and get pressure? That's the biggest question. Other than that, everything else, I think, from especially a pass rushing situation, lines up very similar to what Grossmatos did at Penn State, where when they got into obvious pass rushing situations, or even third and medium, Grossmatos was a good run defender, and if a team decided to run in those situations, he could hold his own on the interior in that maybe 1 or 2 times that happens. But the majority of the time, he was pass rushing over guards with an advantage of his length and his strength. Hakeem Beeman, he can do the exact same thing. We've seen it. And that's why I chose him for this position over guys like Amin Vanover or even Smith Vilbert that have similar size and length to what Grossmatos did. Beeman has done it. He's been a guy that has played both positions. He's been as high as 275, 280 in his profile, down to 250-something right now. So he can play either position. The question then just becomes, what is the high-end outside edge rushing potential? Because that's what Penn State really needs to replace with Adisa Isaac. It's not the run defense stuff. They've got enough guys with the body type and the strength to hold up on the edge. It's, do they have enough speed and do they have enough of that pass rushing specialist on the roster? They do have Arnold Ebiketie, but who's the other guy that's going to be that? I don't know that it's going to be Hakeem Beeman, but he can provide versatility to manufacture pressure in other ways if they need to. And that part is going to be the key to the versatility of the Penn State front seven this year and how they generate pressure on the quarterback. Right now, there's no lead dog, so they've got to find a group of players that can collectively get the pressure that they would get from a guy in the past like Grossmatos. Coming in at number 4 on our list of players, another one we're projecting here, and that is corner Johnny Dixon. And the reason I chose Johnny Dixon over a guy like Kalen King is simply that can Kalen King learn 2 positions in his freshman season and play significant snaps? He may see some snaps at slot, he may see some snaps at the boundary corner, but he'll primarily, I think, be playing one instead of winning a slot job and moonlighting on the boundary. Johnny Dixon already has snaps in his college career at both positions at South Carolina, while he has primarily lined up as a boundary corner. In the past, Penn State has had some of their best defenses from a coverage perspective when they took one of their starting corners and moved him inside into the slot on obvious pass rushing situations. John Reed is the example that we're following in this situation. Before his really bad injury that kind of slowed him down, he was turning into an exceptional slot corner and a guy that had the versatility, as you can say, to play on the outside and then move to the inside and give you those critical snaps in key passing situations. The difference between him and Daquan Hardy, and now Johnny Dixon, who's potentially playing that role, is currently in competition for that slot position, is that Johnny Dixon brings more size and length to that position. At 6 foot, 189, almost 190 pounds, he can match up with bigger, faster receivers and stay with them at all levels of the field. He's a true boundary corner who has the versatility to play in the slot. That is super valuable, and that's why I think he can push Daquan Hardy, who's 5'9", 185, 184 pounds, for more snaps in that alignment, because as good as Hardy has been, and he has been pretty dang good at that slot corner position, he doesn't offer the same amount of tools. And Penn State is really deep at that boundary corner position. They're really deep. And in the past, that's what they've done. They've used more of those guys in the slot instead of having a slot-specific player at the cornerback position. So if they can get Joey Porter Jr. at 6'2", 195 with a 35-inch reach, 6'1", 6'2" in there, 200-pound Tariq Castro Fields, and then Johnny Dixon on the field. That is size, speed, length, and versatility. That's what we're looking for here, and I think as far as what we've seen in the past, that John Reed comparison, Johnny Dixon could be one of the better examples of Penn State using that as a cornerback and getting as many of their athletes on the field as possible. As receivers are lining up more and more in diverse situations, that's what Penn State football is going to need. On the flip side, when they play teams that want to run the ball, they need to have a guy that can come down in and play in multiple positions around the box. That leads us to number 3 on our list, safety Jair Brown. Now, this is me sort of projecting him as the guy who wins that free safety, field safety position. In the past, Penn State has used players in a bunch of different ways, and this is really where we get our most diverse look at versatility. A guy like Lamont Wade, who formerly started as a boundary corner, played a lot in the slot. He was one of the most prolific slot defenders that Penn State has had over the last 7 to 8 years. He also lined up at free safety, deep in coverage, and a lot in the box. That is what Jair Brown can bring some of to this situation. I think Nick Scott is also a really good comparison, and that's who I have in my mind, but the slot distribution here is more about what Lamont Wade did in his past. So the ability to play in the box, to play in the slot, and to play deep. Jair Brown has similar tools in a lot of those ways, albeit maybe not as strong of a run defender as Lamont Wade was, but potentially a better coverage player. So again, you notice here, we're talking about the diversity to play in the slot. And that is what Jair Brown is going to need to do at some point, lining up, even if you do play deep, lining up over top of players and keeping an eye on them to make sure that if they do go deep, you're able to cover them. And that's one thing that Penn State missed last year, was that ability to cover players at multiple levels of the field when it comes to receivers running routes. Jair Brown has a chance to be a little bit more of that than what they've had in the past. They will have to find someone to replace Lamont Wade, who is a really good run defender from that position. There's no getting around that he was a good underneath zone coverage player and run defender, so patrolling and stopping things in the flat, that's going to be a part of this. And if Jair Brown can round out that skill set, he'll be a very versatile piece, possibly the most versatile piece on the Penn State defense heading into 2021. Coming in at number 2, this is a guy that Penn State fans are very excited about, and they should be, and maybe not in size, but in game, should compare to one of Penn State's most successful Sam linebackers. That is linebacker Cam Brown. Now, Curtis Jacobs has shown already in flashes that he can be a guy that plays near the line of scrimmage, that can get into the backfield, make impact plays, and play in coverage. Cam Brown was very good at flashing those high-end plays, but was the most reliable of Penn State's linebackers to line up in the slot. And as you can see, he lined up all over the field for Penn State, providing that size, length, and versatility at the Sam linebacker position. That was ultimately what he was very good at and what Penn State missed last year after he graduated, moved on to the NFL and the New York Giants. So finding a guy that can provide that level of competence, not just high-end play, but competence at the Sam linebacker position, provides stability to that same puzzle we're trying to solve. Who's that 11th defender? If Penn State can find any one of these 3 guys to be a reliable 11th defender, or more than one, truthfully, they're going to have the chance to have a huge bounce back for their defensive performance and stability in 2021. Curtis Jacobs, a great coverage player, and that's probably the most exciting thing, is that his coverage skills are possibly better than that of Cam Brown, while he also provides the size and force now at 230 pounds to be able to play in the box. At 230 pounds and 6'1", he's building himself into a really all-around football player with the strength and thickness to be able to play at multiple levels of the defense. Now, we have to see it in more snaps. Last year, he was really used early in the season and then late in the season, but wasn't used consistently throughout the year in his true freshman year. Heading into his second year on campus, he has the potential to have a big season for Penn State football, as he is the presumed starter at that Sam linebacker position, and he's an exciting player that with that versatility can make plays at every level of the field. That is what you're looking for. That is the definition of versatility. Coming in at number 1, our player that has proven over his time that he is the most versatile player on the Penn State football team, that is safety Jaquan Brisker. There's no projection here. We've seen him do it over 2 seasons, 263 snaps in the box. He has 500 plus at free safety, and he's also been lined up in the slot as a player that can play in multiple levels of the defense. That sort of versatility is what you're looking for from your key safety. He's also talked about this year about lining up at more positions, not just positions on the field, but also at that free safety position and at that strong safety position to give more unpredictable coverage alignments for Penn State football. If he's able to do that and they're able to mix and match in the secondary, they will have an advantage when it comes to the ability to keep the offense off balance, and assignment football can remain a little bit more of a mystery if you can roll your coverages with your safeties. That's going to be the key of what Jaquan Brisker can do. He's shown the ability to play deep in the box and in select man coverage. If he can do that, you can disguise your secondary and your coverage alignments so much better. Going back to Jair Brown, if he's able to do that as well, and you can play both your safeties at multiple levels of the field, you really can confuse quarterbacks and show them things that are not there pre-snap. That sort of coverage versatility for Jaquan Brisker is going to be a huge thing for Penn State football, making him the most versatile player on the Penn State football roster. And you may have noticed that none of those guys were offensive players. And with respect to Pat Freiermuth, Penn State has not had any versatility in their offensive receiving core, which is primarily where you have that, over the last 5 years. This is one critique I think that is fair of any of the coordinators going back to Joe Moorhead in 2017, that Penn State has not been diverse in the way they've deployed their weapons. We just spent a good, 10 minutes talking about how defenses try to solve those problems that offenses present. Penn State is not presenting any of those problems to the defense. The most versatile that they have is the standard versatility of lining up your tight end in line or in the slot. In modern college football, let me tell you, that is standard operating procedure. There's nothing special about that. If you look at Penn State's most versatile receivers, Their primary receiver is either lined up in the slot or out wide the majority of the time. Last year, albeit with the inability to install an offense and probably a simplified program, Parker Washington lined up like 95 to 98% of his snaps in the slot. Jahan Dotson, 92% of his snaps were outside on the boundary. Players didn't move. It was static formations. That makes it easier on the defense. All of those problems that the defense has to solve, if you don't present them, there's nothing that they have to really worry about from a formational or a personnel perspective. It's simply about, do you have better guys than they do at those positions? Now, Penn State has never really used their running backs as receiving threats in the slot or out wide. So that is not something at any point, and I don't know that that's particularly a valuable thing to do anyway, but we have not seen them use, I think, the most important thing of taking your best football player, whoever he may be, and giving him some snaps as a slot receiver. Because again, let's paint the picture in the reverse situation. You move Jahan Dotson into the slot, and he's faced up against Curtis Jacobs, maybe Jonathan Sutherland. Is that an advantage for the offense or the defense? Now, there is some ability to double team easier in the slot. There's some ability to make sure that that guy does not hurt you. But then at that point, you're taking multiple resources for one player, leaving one-on-ones for other players on the boundary. And that's really what this is about, is finding matchups and finding problems for the defense to then have to solve. Going back to 2016 and 2015 is the last time Penn State has had any receiver that has been able to moonlight between the slot and the boundary, with DeAndre Tompkins doing it in 2016 with 75% of his snaps out wide, 24% in the slot. And then in 2015, you have Deshaun Hamilton, who is spending a little bit of time in the slot and the majority of his time out wide. That's really all we're talking about. We're not talking about a 50-50 split here. We're talking about 70-30, 66-33. That's really, you don't even have to get up into a third of your slots. You just have to present the threat to the defense that you're going to move your players around, and they can't expect to line up their best corner on your best receiver, and they know exactly where that is at all times. That, I think, is one thing Mike Yurcich is going to be able to do more than other offensive coordinators, is be more unpredictable with where players end at the snap. Maybe not where they line up originally, but where they line up as the ball is snapped. We've talked a lot this offseason about motion. We talked a lot about formational uses and spreading the field out. This is why. This versatility to just be a little bit more unpredictable for the offensive receivers, I think, can lead to huge dividends for the Penn State offense. And going back to the thing people care about the most, it will help Sean Clifford with easier throws, more open throws, and more big throws down the football field, which is what Penn State wants and what Penn State needs to be successful in 2021. That's the BWI Daily Edition. Stay tuned. We'll be getting updates through training camp from James Franklin, as well as some views of practice over the next couple of weeks. So subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, if you want to see the full stuff, you want to see the full show, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Blue White Illustrated on YouTube. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We'll talk again tomorrow.